Hello and welcome. This is the Bytes vsbytes podcast. I am your host, Ama Grigic, and today I have a guest called Jochem Verheul. He's one of the co-founders for VMC.ai. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, could you tell me a little bit about your background?
Well, I have been an entrepreneur for the past 15 years, always in tech. So I had a software company which is still operational, and I used that software company as a cash flow foundation to kick off different other projects.
Mm-hmm. And one of those is, of course, VMC.
Yeah.
So could you tell me a little bit about that and how you started that?
Yeah, just to clarify, the software company is now running on its own without me, and I'm full in on VMC. And to tell about VMC, basically it's a solution for mobility as a service which happened to use a blockchain because it's more effective. We will try to solve two issues. The first issue is the lack of interoperability between all the systems that the big mobility companies use, and it causes a lot of inefficiencies, irrational competition, and of course we want to open up the system a bit. So we want to democratize the access to the mobility as a service industry. So if you have free bikes and you want to lend them out, feel free. You don't have to build an entire IT infrastructure. You can use it. You can use ours.
Yeah. So the what happens right now with a lot of mobility companies is probably that they have their own kind of closed source products that they use.
Yeah.
And you try to provide one that's available for everyone, right?
Yeah, well, they can keep their own systems,
sure.
But they have access to our system as well. So it's like an additional database that you can put under all these infrastructures that they happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they can share like three ledgers: an incentive ledger, which also manages transactions, and a data ledger, and an identity ledger.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you an example, for the to share incentives with each other, we have scooters connected to the network, to the blockchain, and we have buses connected to our blockchain. And we are now building a situation that if the scooter company delivers a passenger to the bus, then the bus company says, well, here, thank you very much, here is €1 as a small reward. And then together they can program in small incentives that can have a big impact to solve local mobility issues with each other instead of having some kind of senseless competition.
Yeah, so to pull it back a little bit, because that's a hard topic for everyone, is blockchain, of course, which you use. Maybe we can dive into that a little bit about what it actually is, right? Because that's something that I get asked a lot as well. Yeah. People that aren't in the tech industry, they're like, Hey, what is this blockchain everybody's talking about? So maybe you can explain just in a high level fashion what it actually does, because you said it's like a database, but maybe you can explain it a little bit more.
Yeah, well, of course, it's like a database. The main difference is that usually a blockchain is decentralized. It means that the server, there are multiple servers that all contain the same data, and they all know from each other what is the state of the blockchain. And because they all know from each other what the state of the blockchain is, it becomes impossible to tinker with that data. And therefore it can provide a source of truth.
Yeah.
So that's I think the main difference.
Yeah. So you have a lot of servers that connect to that, or actually connect to that blockchain. They know about what the state is, and also that helps because, for example, if one server doesn't work,
there's single point of failure. Of course. Yeah.
Because normally, in some websites, for example, when they have a database, they have just one server.
Yeah.
If that server goes down,
if you do something with websites, you know that it's an issue that sometimes happens, of course. And in theory, it shouldn't happen with the blockchain. And with the bigger blockchains, of course, you see that indeed that does not happen with Bitcoin, for example. It's that's a remarkable project because nobody owns it, nobody knows where it came from. It's just there, people run nodes, and it works.
Yeah,
But you can just pull the plug from your node, and it will keep on working.
Yeah, because that's interesting to me as well. I don't know the exact way those nodes kind of run. So, for example, for your blockchain that you created, how does that work? So how does someone, maybe someone says, okay, I want to run a node for the VMC blockchain as well.
Yeah.
How does that work?
In our case, it's different than a Bitcoin node because we have an authenticated blockchain, which means that it's not possible for just anybody to run nodes. It's really, really easy. It works like the same as you would have access to the Google Maps API, for example. You have to have access, you get a key, there you go. But it allows us to deliver one level of additional security.
Yeah, so you... for example, if someone comes to you and says, okay, I want to be a node in the blockchain, then you have to provide them with some kind of key.
They request a key, we give them to them, and they can run a node. The main difference, of course, is then that if we see that there's some kind of bad participant, we can easily...
You can cut them off,
Yeah, they will be cut off automatically, but
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because then you need to somehow have an authentication server or whatever. Aren't you worried about the single point of failure coming back to that again? Because you have one server, of course, that does the authentication.
No, of course, there is a level of centralization.
Yeah, sure.
That's true. So so we can kick people out of the network. For us, it's necessary, I would say, because we work with Europe's biggest mobility companies, and they expect a level of trust. And I cannot sell to them that maybe
anybody can run a node.
and it's also a matter of timing, right? So if we become bigger gradually, we can open up the system even further, and maybe even just remove the authentication layer, which would be brilliant. But for now, we need to manage.
Because
the blockchain as well.
Yeah, I get that, because a lot of companies are afraid when someone can just do something to the network, right? And say, okay.
Compared with IOTA, IOTA has the Oracle for a long time in their network. Basically, the Oracle is like the master node, which determines the truth. So it has a big single point of failure.
Yeah, sure.
But you need it. You cannot expect it from day one to be fully decentralized and completely operational.
Yeah. So the thing about blockchain is that a lot of people say, and it's usually used synonymously as something to do with Bitcoin, which is it's not true, right? It's not the same thing. It does use the blockchain technology, but it's not one and the same, right?
No, it's completely different. Our token, if you invest in the company, you invest in our company. So we have shareholders, and we have a security token that has a right of a share of revenue, but the token that is being used in the network is a stable token, which is pegged to the euro. So it's not it's completely different.
Yeah, so when you explain to people what you do and you say that you use blockchain, do you kind of you use some kind of currency as well, so some kind of coin as well, right? Or token.
Yeah, but it's our own token.
Yeah. Do you also get that kind of question that people are kind of saying, okay, is this just another crypto coin that is popping up, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, usually when I explain what I do is
they don't get it at all.
That happens quite frequently as well. But what if I try to explain it to somebody that I know that this person doesn't really have a technical background, I say that we try to build an open mobility infrastructure, which of course is really broad, and then I try to make it more concrete by saying, well, it's like an open source and easy to access version of the OV chip card. It allows you to participate on that network as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it as well. So What is your kind of view on this kind of whole blockchain hype that we had? I mean, I think it's kind of dying down right now, especially with the kind of cryptocurrency market.
If it goes up, it goes down. Especially when you saw the figures that we saw last year. Yeah, there were so many cowboys in this field that for me, I purposely did not join. I couldn't get my head around it, and you just know that, hey, if this attracts so many people, I don't want to be affiliated with that kind of people, especially. It's just a bunch of hillbillies coming up with white papers, screaming, selling, and
especially when it's
people,
especially when it's unregulated, because that's kind of the state of the market at the moment. Yeah. So did you also invest in some kind of crypto coins or whatever, or did you already say, okay, we're not going to do that at all?
No, it's fascinating, right? So I remember in 2009 or 10, there was a news article on nu.nl, and it said, Bitcoin is dead. It dropped to 50 cents. It used to be $1 something. And I was like, let's buy it. So I spent a day or maybe even two to actually try to buy a Bitcoin, which was really, really tough back then. And so
when was this? This was, I think, maybe in the beginning times of Bitcoin, if I heard the prices, right?
Yeah. It was, and really, for me at least, it was a challenge to acquire a Bitcoin. So I bought for $100 in Bitcoin, and then, of course, 2 days later, I forgot my private key, but that happens. So
I did get you couldn't get in your wallet anymore.
No, and we did some mining in 2014 and 15, and then we pulled the plug because we thought it's not profitable at all. And yes, I invested in it, but like in November 2017, I got out of everything. So I made and I lost some, and when the market cap hit 250, I started to invest again this year, which was not the best move.
We all know where the market is right now. As of recording, it's December of 2018, and
so I lost 50%. But it's don't put your money in it. Just put a little bit of in it, maybe, and play around.
It's as a lot of people say, right? They say, okay, if you want to invest in it, just invest the money. You can lose if you want to lose it.
And do it for do it because it's fun. And don't do it because you want to get rich quick.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to go back to VMC because that's the main thing you're working on right now. So what are some of the kind of the challenges you've seen while starting up actually this whole company?
Yeah, well, our strategy was not to sell it before we build it. So we just built our own blockchain infrastructure. We invested ourselves pretty heavily in it. And get it up and running. So people now actually can take the bus using our app, pay with tokens. You can use an e-scooter, which is really, really nice. But building actually something that works using a blockchain, that's of course was quite a challenge. So on the technical side, it was very, very intriguing to do. And now we have the challenge, I would say, to better communicate what we do, because in the end, we are a bunch of nerds in an office who do cool things. And now we have to step back and say, okay, we try to solve this mobility issue. 2 things, interoperability and democratization of access to this mobility industry. Simple as that. And we can do really creative things as a consequence, and we have to improve on that.
So it's more about conveying what you're actually doing than the creating, of course, as you said, that's
the technology
difficult.
Part is difficult, and then the communication part is difficult as well. And because you're so deep in the tech, you quickly end up. It's difficult to explain it in a really simple way.
That's the thing, because I can imagine, and I've noticed that myself on projects as well. It's like, this is logical, right? This is totally logical to me, but
that's what you do 24 hours a day, right?
And that's the hard thing, is actually really translating it into something someone on the street would even get what the real deal is behind it, right? So was it also I'm curious about that. Was it also hard to kind of find the people to do this project with, to actually create that technology? Because that I can imagine is also a pretty difficult task.
No, for my software company, there is a great. We know really talented developers, so we got the best out of that software company in order to make sure that we have a great team to start with.
Yeah.
And because I have been an entrepreneur for the past 15 years, you also know where to find the right people. And what I also do, so you have a few really talented people with experience, and the first thing that I like to do is also onboard really smart kids, but not with that much experience. But you know that if you just give them a computer and some time, they will be wizards in no time.
Yeah, that's what I usually discuss with a lot of people that come on the podcast as well, is that they actually also already say to me, like, I look at more of the soft skills, right? So can he communicate an idea? Can he or she actually communicate an idea? And also, I mean, the technical part can be learned in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
right?
but attitude
that's it,
is the most challenging part. Yeah, so you want to have people who have or are pretty smart, but also capable of working in a team, talking with a lot of respect towards each other, but being able to challenge any kind of discussion.
And working on what you do at VMC as well. So you recently started working together with a company for scooters. So is it S Wheels to go? Or how do you say? How do you actually say it?
I think he would pronounce it as Wheels to Go.
Yeah. So, could you tell me how you actually tie in there, but also what this partnership means to you as a kind of startup company?
Yeah. Well, in the next 3 months, we will announce more mobility companies that will work with us. So, what we initially did was connecting buses. Well, that's great, of course, but we want to demonstrate that we can do more than public transport, because what we can do is solve, for example, the first mile, last mile challenge.
Sure, yeah.
So we need two types of vehicles. So we have the last mile with the bus and the first mile with the e-scooter. So that's why it's nice to have them on board as well to adapt to VMC. And it's really, I wouldn't say easy to connect an e-scooter to a blockchain, but all we need is a sticker on it, and usually the rest of all the hardware is already available in the scooter. So yeah.
Yeah, so you showed me an example of, for example, the thing you do in the bus. So you had like it's kind of a QR code. Is it a QR? It's a QR code, right?
Yeah, so the bus we have basically blockchain is you can do wallet-to-wallet transactions.
Sure.
So what we did is we gave the bus or any kind of vehicle, so also the scooter, basically has a public key. And the QR code that you see in the bus is... it contains a few things, but it also contains reference to the public key.
Yeah.
And in the bus, of course, we need to have a screen because of two things. We need to have a beep. Yeah, seriously, that was one of the big reasons to have a terminal in the bus, because the bus driver... you should be able to hear beep if somebody checked in, and
so they know they've paid, or
beep, check in, okay. But second thing is, of course, if somebody would find out that this sticker that you can put into a bus would refer to a public key, then I would know what I would do. I would just get all stickers off and put my stickers on there and let people pay
to me.
Get
that's
rich.
crazy. Yeah,
So,
I didn't think about that one.
So we need some kind of randomization in there, and so it becomes impossible.
Yeah. So, for example, for that thing that you did with the e-scooters, so do they kind of integrate that in their own app, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's the cool thing I think about VMC is because they will integrate it in their app. But let's say you also use VMC as a matter of payment or sharing data or identities. It doesn't really matter. Both of the apps are interoperable with each other. So maybe you have an app for a taxi service that uses our blockchain. Fine, you can also use the same step. So people can go out creatively building things that help to solve mobility issues, but still all the apps can work with each other. Yeah,
that's crazy because you have a potential. It's a big market, right? The mobility market, and
mobility, and especially the mobility as a service industry is just it's just getting out of its infancy a little bit. So it's really really nice.
Yeah, to take the example of, for example, in the city of Rotterdam, you see all these kind of e-scooters and all these kind of e-bikes running around all over the place, and like in the weirdest spots. They're just of course they're in some cases just left there because someone else can pick it up. So that's also what you target, right? So these kind of companies that kind of do that.
So we have two ways of entering the market. For the big mobility providers, we offer them more creativity. So there is a big bus company that will adapt 100% to VMC, so all buses will be connected to our network. But it is not because we don't compete with the over-chip card, of course. We are more like an add-on because this company wanted to do some kind of loyalty program, great, but you cannot do a loyalty program using the over-chip cards.
It's not made for that.
An app. It's just not made for that.
For the people that are listening, the over-chip card is kind of the per default public transportation card in the Netherlands, right? Which you can just charge and use.
Which is a great system, especially if compared to all the systems which are operational in all the other parts of the world. Any other country you visit, usually it's really fragmented. So the over-chip card, it functions really well, but of course has some downsides. We offer the big mobility companies easy access to a system which they can be more creative with, and for them it's also easy because they can connect more different kind of mobility services easy to their network. So to have an add-on for the big mobility companies is a strategy to go to market, and the other strategy is we offer the startups a really efficient and cheap way to have a payment, data, and identity service on your services as well. Because we already built it, you use our API. Of course, we need to do a lot of configuration and building stuff, but compared to building something from scratch, it's
I mean, if the thing is that a lot of these mobility companies, they're not going to create this whole kind of technology, right? They're not going to create a whole blockchain for themselves again. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, no. And it's also not their mission, right? So their mission is to have a piece of the market in the mobility industry and not necessarily in the blockchain or payments or data industry.
So I can imagine that kind of running this kind of network of nodes and stuff like that costs a lot of money. So how does that work with, for example, how does a client of yours, for example, pay you? Is that some kind of a recurring fee that they pay, or is that per transaction, or how does that work?
So first of all, because we have that authentication layer, and because we do it a little bit differently, so we use a very efficient we use a very efficient consensus algorithm, proof elapsed time consensus algorithm from the Sawtooth project, which uses the validation, the hardware validation in the chips. So it can do validation really, really quick and efficient compared to the proof of work consensus algorithms. But it's also because we have that authentication layer that we can use such an efficient way of doing validation in a network. So at this moment, it's not expensive. And what we also do is in the terminals that you see in the bus, we have 8 processors. We don't need 8 processors, so we only dedicate 2 to run the processes that we need to display the QR code and a few other things. And the rest of the processors we can use to do validation in the network. At this moment, it's not because it's pretty complex, of course, to set up.
Of course.
But that's the theory. So we want to, the more vehicles connected to the network, the bigger, the more processing power the network also gets. And of course, other people should run nodes as well.
Yeah. And that's also how you, in theory, could later on get your, I don't know, your payments out of it or whatever, right?
Oh, yeah. So and our business model is, because we also thought that, well, it's kind of a rip-off if we would make a utility token and that let people invest in it, and then maybe it goes up, but maybe it will go down.
Yeah.
It becomes an object of speculation, and then if it becomes an object of speculation,
it's not good for you as a company as well.
No, of course not, because big mobility companies don't want to have that. First of all, because they lose their margins, but it's also from an ethical perspective. You can argue whether or not this democratization dream that many of these companies claim to want to achieve. I think in many cases it achieves the opposite, because their tokens are a subject of speculation, and if there's speculation, there are winners and losers, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Which is logical. I mean, you want to be a stable company that provides this kind of network that people can use, of course, for this mobility service.
Yes. So, and for when it comes to the business model, of course. Access to the blockchain is free. So let's say you want to have 3 bicycles to add to the network. Go ahead. But if you have a revenue bigger than 25,000 euros, you have to start to pay a small transaction fee to us.
Which is logical. I mean, you cannot. If someone is doing like a few million euros, it's not fair to you to do it differently.
What we then do is to because we want to provide. We also want to democratize the ownership of the company. So what we want to do is we have a security token, and the security token is a revenue share model. So if you bought the security token, a piece of the transaction fee, will go to the security token holders daily. So the bigger the network gets, the more money you will receive. And the more money it will generate, and that's a way of rewarding you, of course, for making the investment to us. But it follows a logical path of business. So the better we do as a company, the more vehicles connected, the more transactions. The more value in that token, and then we also decrease the speculation effect.
Yeah, exactly. And looking at the technology, of course, we talked about blockchain and everything around that. So this is a big chance. I didn't expect it to be this interesting, because of it is an interesting field, of course. I mean, the whole mobility world, and I love that you saw a chance in that, in using it this way, and getting it to do what you wanted to do. But also, what is interesting to me is also what you kind of see as chances for kind of the blockchain technology to be used in different areas, not maybe in your field. So what do you see happening there? There was all kinds of crazy ideas that people were doing.
Everything on the blockchain.
Everything on the blockchain, and people were, as we mentioned before the podcast, people were saying, it can cure cancer and stuff like that. Which is pretty crazy and not at all true, I think. But what do you kind of see as other maybe other kind of ways or other things that we could use this technology for as well?
Yeah, it's difficult to really predict the future, of course.
Yeah.
But you see on a corporate level that a blockchain is being used for supply chain management. So there are big companies experiment with it and implement it pretty successfully. So that will definitely improve supply chain management processes.
Yeah.
So that's on a corporate level, and on the whole dream of democratization of ownership, democratization of revenue, and of a lot of other things. There, I hope we can see better initiatives that really are capable of executing on it properly.
Yeah.
So there are now cool initiatives with democratization.
Democratization. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do it again. There are now really cool initiatives about democratization of ownership of real estate, for example. So
that's crazy. Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, and also for contracts and kind of agreements.
Yeah, of course. Not to mention the smart contracts. So we are to give you a really beautiful example, I think. So we talk with a big mobility company, and they explain to me, sometimes we work with subcontractors, and they do what they need to do, but I have to wait for 2 years to get my money, and it's really painful. It's not only
exactly. Every business owner knows this kind of pain more or less.
So if you can agree on certain payment conditions before, you can easily program it in. If we meet these conditions, this is what happens, and the payment has been done instantly. That's
really
beauty. Trivial, but it's a big step forward, of course.
Yeah, and as you said, the kind of the supply chain thing is also interesting. I know that a lot of kind of package handlers and
the big shipping companies, of course.
Yeah, they are using it to do the manifests and stuff like that, right? To be sure where the package was and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So those are kind of things that you see, and also what I've seen on the internet a lot. A lot of people are talking about those kind of applications, right?
Because of course, corporate companies, bigger companies have more money to spend, and they have a bigger. If they invest in something, they will execute on it properly. And it will make these complex processes a bit better. But I of course I hope for really smart companies to step up and to be a part of opening up industries, creating a better ownership of all the stuff that we have in the world.
Yeah, and making it really, more transparent.
Yeah. But it will become really difficult, of course, because every time you see with some kind of disruptive technology, it promises a certain kind of future, but the forces of capitalism and just pure nature of people
they destroy it. Yeah,
they destroy it, not necessarily, but it's difficult to
limit it or whatever.
It's difficult to manage it.
It's a little bit like what's happening with the internet as well, right? Which was also an open kind of open network.
And now we're stuck with Facebook.
Or whatever. A lot of people are saying that lately. I get that. Well, the thing is, that's as you said, that's the beauty of kind of these kind of technologies. They kind of promise something that you want to achieve as well as a business owner, but also as a human being, I think. But and it's unfortunate, and in some cases it gets limited by whatever reason, right? A government or whatever, right?
Yeah, and don't even want to say that governments are the biggest restriction in this moment. It's just the nature of people that we always want more and more and more for ourselves.
That's
that
true.
It becomes a challenge.
So to wrap up, because I want to ask you the final question, and the final question is also always the hardest one.
Sure.
At least a lot of people say it's the hardest one. So what are you most proud of since you started VMC?
That we actually have an application that people can use to take the bus and to take a ride on an e-scooter company. Something really, really trivial in life that uses this complex technology that everybody is talking about, but nobody understands. So we made it really accessible, and that's really, really cool. Just download the app, take the bus. Here you go.
Yeah, that's cool. I didn't even know that they use it already. And when you showed me the video, I was like, this is so easy, man.
Yeah, so we don't want to market it right now big time because, hey, let's make sure that it works really, really brilliantly first. And then we'll market it. But next year, we also going to roll out a bit further. So we have an office in Singapore since a few months.
Oh, cool, really?
Yeah, so we will go to Asia and explore really cool things over there as well.
Very cool. So where can people find you on the internet?
VMC.ai.
Very cool. And of course, for the listeners, you can find the Bytes vs. Bytes podcast on bitsvsbytes.com and also on all platforms for podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, all over the place. And also on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. It's all Bytes vs. Bytes. And I would like to thank you for listening, and until next time.